Hi, welcome to the channel. Today's video is titled The Wood That Gave the British a Beatdown, Forgotten History. Okay, we're going to check this video together. And I love your thoughts and your contribution in the comments below. Let's dive right in.
Following the end of the American Revolution, it was decided that the United States needed a permanent standing army rather than a group of hastily gathered militias, but equally critical was a standing navy. The creation of the Continental Navy, as well as the Marine Corps and Army, had proven necessary to secure freedom from Great Britain, but the future was very uncertain. The Americans knew that they would never be able to compete with the major European powers with regard to massive fleets numbering hundreds of warships. In addition, the building of the great ships of the line was not considered feasible. What was considered most logical was a small fleet of frigates, also called fourth and fifth raters, ships that were fast enough to outrun and outmaneuver the more heavily armored European battleships, but powerful enough to hold their own and defeat the frigates of other nations. And a lot of thought went into their design. What decisions were made regarding the construction of frigates? Why was American warship building the envy of the world? What made American frigates so successful? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
Our trees secured America's
President George Washington and other prominent Americans in government who celebrated the birth of our new country knew that there could be no resting on those laurels. Problems arose in Europe yet again, and piracy in the Mediterranean Sea and Caribbean Sea threatened American maritime trade. See our video on the white slave trade in North Africa as an example. The British were attacking American vessels and kidnapping seamen, and the French had started the same practice. In reaction to the growing global concerns, the Naval Act of March 10, 1794 provided $688,888.82, equivalent to about $18.5 million today, to finance the building of 6 frigates, 4 ships to carry 44 guns and 2 ships to carry 36 guns, respectively. The act also provided the recruitment and salaries for naval officers, sailors, and Marines, and outlined how each ship should be manned in order to operate them. The well-known shipbuilder Joshua Humphreys is credited as the designer of the 6 frigates, but Revolutionary warship captains John Foster Williams, John Barry, and shipbuilders Josiah Fox and James Hackett were also consulted. Humphreys wisely decided on using the most durable and readily available materials available for building the ships, using primarily white pine, longleaf pine, white oak, and, most importantly, southern live oak. Live oak was used for framing as it was strong, dense, and long-lasting, weighing up to 75 pounds per cubic foot, and it grows primarily in coastal areas of the United States from Virginia to Texas, with the most suitable timber found in the coastal areas of Georgia near St. Simon's Island. Ironically, this requirement for live oak was the primary cause of delays in the frigate's construction. The War Department hired shipbuilder John T. Morgan to procure the live oak in sufficient quantities. Captains John Barry, Richard Dale, and Thomas Truxton's 1794 prediction that, quote, "Building these frigates of live oak will certainly be a great savings to the United States, as we are well satisfied that their frames will be perfectly sound half a century hence, and it is very probable they may continue so for a much longer period." Oak and pine had long been used in building ships for centuries, and there were many diverse types of those trees. Oak, being one of the sturdiest hardwoods, was the chosen material by the Europeans, hence the depletion of many trees over the centuries to allow for continued construction. One of the great reasons why Britain wanted to retain the American colonies was due to the abundance of wood for ship construction for the Royal Navy. as well as wood for sale abroad as an export commodity. The use of southern
That makes sense. Makes sense because I mean, ship, right? To build ship, and you've got the wood, you've got the trees. We need access to it, or we need it, or we need the land so we can be able to access it easily. Because again, if they can't access it easily, it's gonna be a problem, right? Right. Hmm. Okay.
Navy, as well as wood for sale abroad as an export commodity. The use of southern live oak in the building of the original 6 frigates of the new United States Navy can be found in the order to procure the most durable wood in the world, the live oak of Georgia. Building the new U.S. Navy in the 1790s was paramount. As early as 1799, the federal government had passed the Federal Timber Purchasers Act, which included the purchase of Blackbeard's and Grover's Islands for the express purpose of maintaining live oak reserves for the exclusive use of the Navy. The name live oak comes from the fact that evergreen oaks remain green and live throughout winter, when other oaks are dormant and leafless. The name is used in North America, where evergreen oaks are widespread in warmer areas along the Atlantic coast, from southeast Virginia to Florida, west along the Gulf Coast to Louisiana and Mexico, and across the southwest to California. Because live oak trees have a short height and low-hanging branches, the lumber was used in curved parts of the frame, such as knee braces, which are single-piece L-shaped braces that spring forward from the side and support the deck, in which the grain runs perpendicular to structural stress, making for exceptional strength. Because the trees grow in water, the wood is naturally saturated, creating a dense cellulose fiber that is strong, yet also flexible, allowing for reduction in friction in high seas or battle, where the stress is better distributed along the length of the ship. This allows the joists to flex back without splintering or shattering under intense pressure due to its strength and energy absorption, such as from cannonballs and heavy seas. Live oaks were not used for planking because the curved and often convoluted shape of the tree did not lend itself to being milled to planking of any length. This was where white pine was used, which hardens as it ages and has great resistance to water and weather. The U.S. Navy's first fleet of frigates would be powerful enough to engage any frigates of the French or British navies, yet they were also fast enough to evade any ship of the line, and the abundance of live oak and white pine ensured a large supply for future ships. Another benefit to using live oak was the ship's armament. Frigates of the day generally carried 18-pounders, cannons so named for the weight of the cannonballs they fired, and they were heavy. European-built frigates were mostly armed with these cannons. Only ships of the line carried heavier cannons of the 24 to 36-pounder variety. However, because live oak was used, 24-pounders, much heavier than the 18-pounders, could be used in the new frigates as their construction allowed for the weight without sacrificing strength or speed. These heavier guns had greater range and firepower.
Interesting, because I was about to ask that. And also, I want to even ask, wait, I hope this is not Titanic. But I want to even also ask, was the same wood or is the same structure, or was it the same structure that was used for, or the same plan that was used for the Titanic ship? Ah, wow. Wow. But again, do you want us to also check the white slave trade? I would love to check that video. I think I've checked it before, been a long time, but I would also love to check it from a different perspective. Again, if you want us to check it, let us know. We will do well to check it. But yeah, this is an eye opener. I've actually not even considered or thought of checking any videos that potentially will be talking about woods used for ships, the likes of it. But this is interesting. We learn every day.
Designs were also revolutionary for their
Take it back a bit.
These heavier guns had greater range and firepower. The designs were also revolutionary for their time, and these frigates had the ability to overpower other frigates, but they were quite capable of superior speed to escape from the ships of the line, and sometimes carried as many as 100 guns. The design was most
100.
unusual for the time, a departure from traditional frigate designs seen in Europe. These ships had deeper drafts, were longer on the keel, and narrower on their beam or width. By framing the ship with a diagonal scantling or rib scheme aimed at limiting hogging, this gave the ships extremely heavy hull planking. The hull had far greater strength than the hulls of other navies' frigates. This increased strength also allowed for the addition of taller masts and more sails, adding speed. Live Oak built the frames and hulls of the first 6 frigates: USS Constellation, built by David Stoddard in Baltimore, Maryland; USS President, built by Christian Berg in New York; USS Constitution, built by George Claghorn in
Mm.
Boston; USS Philadelphia, and USS Chesapeake, built by Josiah Fox in Gosport, Virginia; USS United States, built by Joshua Humphreys
All
in
by
Philadelphia,
them.
Pennsylvania; and USS Congress, built by James Hackett in Kittery, Maine. The most famous of these frigates, as well as the only survivor, is the USS Constitution. Today she is maintained in the Charlestown Navy Yard, National Parks of Boston. The
Mm.
Constitution is a living example of the genius of her construction. Her hull is built of inner and outer white oak horizontal planking with live oak vertical framing sandwiched in between, adding strength. The live oak frames are bolted together in pairs, or braces, and just a few inches of space between each pair for the air to circulate. At the waterline, Constitution's hull is over 22 inches thick, like the other frigates built. The Constitution earned the nickname Old Ironsides during the War of 1812 after the famous battle against HMS Guerriere. Of the 6 original frigates, the USS President was the 7th that was finished and prepared for war. The British gunners and American sailors both observed that the enemy shot which struck the hull of the Constitution bounced off the thick oak sides. The Constitution is the most famous U.S. frigate due to her actions during the War of 1812, when she captured numerous British merchant ships
Wow.
and 5 warships: the aforementioned HMS Guerriere, HMS Java, HMS Pictou, HMS Cyan, and HMS Levant. The British had taken note of the rugged nature of what they called Yankee-built frigates. After the War of 1812, British attorney and naval historian William James took note of the incredible durability of the U.S. frigates, in particular USS President, which the British captured. James wrote, "The relative stoutness of topsides cannot be fully expressed by feet and inches, for, while the timbers of the American 44 are placed as close together as they can be, there is a considerable space between each timber of the British 38. About 3 inches below the main deck port sills, the President's sides are 22 inches through. In fact, an American warship of war is almost a bed of timber." USS President was a 44-gun frigate like Constitution and, as stated, was the last to be completed and launched from New York City on April 10, 1800, with Captain Thomas Truxton in command. She departed for patrols during the Quasi-War on August 5th and recaptured several American merchant ships. After the peace treaty, she returned to the United States in March 1801. In May 1801, USS President sailed under the command of Richard Dale for service in the First Barbary War, arriving off the coasts of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, capturing a Greek vessel with Tripolitan soldiers aboard, and participating in a prisoner exchange. She returned to the United States with freed American sailors on April 14, 1802, and then returned for a second patrol on the Barbary coast in 1804 under the command of Samuel Barron. She joined USS Congress, Constellation, and Constitution on patrol, but President experienced a mostly uneventful tour, assisting in the capture of 3 vessels, performing blockade duties, and undergoing 2 changes of commanding officers. She sailed for home on July 13, 1805, carrying with her many sailors released from captivity in Tripoli after Marine Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon's capture of Tripoli, and again see our video on the white slave trade and that operation.
Definitely are gonna check it because this is the second. This is like, okay, go check it because we've checked it before. We're gonna check it again. But again, I've got a question because I've heard lots of people refer a ship to or their ship to be she. I'm wondering like why do they refer their ship to be she? I want to know. I'm learning, and I honestly do not know. Maybe someone is potentially gonna tell me regarding that. But again, Gonna check this.
On May 16, 1811, in what became known as the Little Belt Affair, USS President, under the command of Captain John Rogers, mistakenly identified HMS Little Belt as the frigate HMS Guerriere, which had attacked American ships to kidnap sailors for service in the Royal Navy. What happened was disputed by both sides, but both ships discharged cannon for several minutes before Rogers determined that Little Belt was a much smaller ship than Guerriere. Little Belt suffered serious damage and 31 killed aboard or wounded during the battle. Rogers offered assistance to Little Belt's captain, Arthur Bingham, but he declined and sailed off for Halifax, Nova Scotia. The U.S. and Royal Navy investigations each determined the other ship to be responsible for the attack, increasing tensions leading up to the War of 1812. After the ship spent a year blockaded in port, Stephen Decatur assumed command of President. On the evening of January 14, 1815, President headed out of New York Harbor but ran aground, suffering some damage to the copper-plated hull used to prevent barnacle growth, but her strong construction prevented a catastrophe. Unable to return to port, USS President was forced to head out to sea. Later the next afternoon, she fought a battle with HMS Endymion. Decatur attempted to capture Endymion to replace President, but this plan failed because Endymion was smaller and more maneuverable. Decatur surrendered his ship to Endymion only to sail away under the cover of night. Subsequently, HMS Pomona and HMS Tenedos overtook President, and Decatur surrendered the ship once again to Endymion. USS President was taken into the Royal Navy as HMS President, but served only briefly before being broken apart in 1818.
Wow.
After the war, Royal Navy officer John Cunningham was also extremely impressed by the construction of the 44-gun frigate USS United States. He noted in his journal, after visiting in 1824, "The States is a tremendous frigate, and what may be called a bed of timber. Her scantling throughout is considerably above that of the Cambridge, an 80-gun Royal Navy ship of the line, according to actual measurement. Her sides are thicker by several inches. They told me that during her late repairs, a quantity of the Macedonian shot were taken out of her sides which had not penetrated."
I want to even ask, what are these? I don't know the name. I don't know what to use. I know like the flags are on top of it. So I don't know what that is called. I don't even want to mention. But there's ones that looks like they wave and stuff. They look like let me take it back a bit so you understand what I'm saying. Like these ones that looks like a clothing or cotton or cloth, linen, whatever. That yeah. What are these? I want to know. Are they used to like serve as protection? What I want to know because I know I'm thinking in my head. I'm thinking like potentially like they put this because of breeze, sea wave and stuff, or so somebody from afar would notice and see them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What do these mean? I want to know, and I'll be glad if somebody also like share that for us to learn. Thank you.
According to actual measurement, her sides are thicker by several inches. They told me that during her late repairs, a quantity of the Macedonian shot were taken out of her sides which had not penetrated. The United States was built in Philadelphia, launched in May 10, 1797, and commissioned on July 11, 1797. On October 25, 1812, the United States fought and captured the frigate HMS Macedonian, which was referenced. The British ship had fired over 100 cannonballs as well as grape and chain shot to damage rigging and increase American casualties, but nothing penetrated the hull all the way through. In fact, British cannonballs had been trapped by up to 12 inches into the hull without any structural damage to the United States. The USS Constellation was built in Baltimore and launched on September 7, 1797. On February 9, 1799, she made history when she fought and captured the French frigate Insurgente. This was the first major victory by an American-designed and built warship. In February 1800, Constellation fought the French frigate Vengeance. Although Vengeance was not captured or sunk, she was so severely damaged that her captain intentionally grounded the ship to prevent her from sinking to save his crew. The USS Chesapeake was originally planned as a 44-gun ship, but when her construction began in 1798, Josiah Fox altered the original design plan, resulting in a ship carrying only 36 guns. Fox's reason for changing the design is not clear, but may be attributed to construction materials that were diverted to complete Constellation. On June 22, 1807, the Chesapeake Leopard affair occurred when the USS Chesapeake was fired upon by HMS Leopard for refusing to comply with a demand to permit a search for deserters from the Royal Navy. After several quick broadsides from Leopard to which Chesapeake replied with only one gun, the Chesapeake struck her colors. HMS Leopard refused the surrender, searched the Chesapeake, captured 4 alleged deserters, and sailed on to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Chesapeake was eventually captured on June 1, 1813 by HMS Shannon shortly after sailing from Boston, Massachusetts. Taken into Royal Navy service, she was later sold and broken up at Portsmouth, England in 1820, and many of her timbers were used to build a watermill. But the British inspected her design and saw the strength of her hull and the solid nature of the ship's framing. USS Congress herself carried 38 guns and was launched on August 15, 1799 from Portsmouth Naval Shipyard under the command of Captain James Seaver for her first voyage on January 6, 1800 to the East Indies. The ship's masts were destroyed in a storm, forcing her return to port for 6 months of repairs. Congress sailed again on July 26 for the West Indies and made uneventful patrols through April 1801. During her career, she captured many merchant ships, but never had a stellar combat career. U.S. Navy continued to expand after the War of 1812 and still required ready access to live oak for repairs and building. There was also competition from civilian shipbuilders, such as the clipper shipbuilders, who also wanted to use live oak in their building. The need was so crucial that President Andrew Jackson, and see our video on him, knew that Europeans were coming into southern shores to steal live oak, especially the British. They had studied the American ships and admired the solid and rugged construction
Yeah.
using live oak, which they did not have. As a result, he made it punishable by death for foreigners if they were caught harvesting the trees, and also harsh punishment for Americans who cut down the trees without license. In fact, the demand for live oak secured the first naval live oak plantation for the cultivation of the valuable wood in 1828, the Santa Rosa Peninsula near Deer Point in Pensacola, Florida. The purchase was just in time, for as Pensacola Congressman Joseph M. White noted in 1831, USS Constitution was in danger of succumbing to decay without a ready supply of live oak for repairs. His actions secured live oak for the nation. Luckily, the USS Constitution was preserved for history as an example of superior American
Ah.
shipbuilding. She was used as a training ship for decades until converted into a museum.
Wow.
Also in 1831, Judge H.M. Breckinridge wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Navy where he stated some facts in relation to the live oak, which nearly 100 years later had a profound effect on the long-term preservation of USS Constitution. Until the age of iron ships, live oak was the most valuable wood in the nation. According to the Live Oak Society, the oldest southern live oak is believed to be the Seven Sisters oak located in Mandeville, Louisiana, with an estimated age of 500 to 1,000 years. And another is Angel Oak in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, which is determined to be about 1,000 years old as well.
Wow.
Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. I actually do not know any about any of this, but we learn every day. We learn every day. And obviously, this is an eye opener for us to learn potentially, right? And I love every bit of what we just learned here. And I know more would be coming in the comment section for us to learn as well. Because, I mean, this is great information to learn. And for me, I would love to. I just hope that the shape still remains or is still in the museum for people to check. This is the reason why I say like learn history. History is good. So sometimes like you'd be like, oh yeah, I may have come across this or heard about this, and you're seeing it live. You're reminiscing on what you've heard, what you've learned, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful to behold, right? And it just like, I don't know, there's this feeling attached to it. But again, let me know if you also want us to check the white slave trade, which I believe lots of people want to also check that. For some people that did not know that they were also whites who were slaves as well, or who were sold as slaves, right? So yeah, this was interesting information learned. Regardless, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all that stuff. And until next time, see you in the next video.